thanks. Is this on? Can we hear? All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out to the Acting is Awesome panel. I think one thing for all of us, we all have our favorite actors, and there's something about the movies and seeing those faces that become so iconic, and we remember actors for our whole life. It's funny, there's two things you can usually talk to anyone about. It's number one, everyone has a favorite movie, so you can talk to anybody about movies. And number two, whether they love all the actors or they hate all the actors, everyone has an opinion on our stars and celebrities, and more importantly, the people who are really out there working and really getting out there. And we're so fortunate to have an awesome panel here. So I'm gonna have everybody just go down the line and introduce themselves. My name's Gray Watson. I work at Warner Brothers in worldwide marketing, and I worked at William Morris for a brief time in the writers and directors department. And so I've seen a little bit of how the world works, but these guys are living it every day and are really gonna offer some awesome insight. So let's go down.
Okay, I'm Nina Jones. I'm from Chattanooga and have moved back here 4 years ago. I work out of Atlanta right now, but after school I lived in New York for 10 years, LA 10 years, and now Georgia is welcoming and embracing actors once again. Praise the Lord.
Hey everybody, I'm Stevie Ray Dallimore, and I moved here also about 4 years ago with my wife, Kate, and I'm a professional actor as well. As well, I do some other things. I'm an artistic director and a director. That's all I'll say for the moment. I guess we can discuss.
I'm Kate Forbes Dallimore. Yes, 20 years of being an actor in New York, stage actress mainly, Broadway, off-Broadway, Royal Shakespeare Company, regional theaters all over the country. So I'm newer to film. And that's been a neat discovery for me.
Hi, I'm AJ Bowen. I'm an indie film actor. I'm originally from Marietta, Georgia. Went to the University of Georgia and then starved in New York for a couple of years, thinking I would make it there. And then my wife and I moved to LA about 10 years ago, and I got lucky and ended up being in some movies with some really talented people and coerced them into letting me sort of collaborate with them, and yeah, that's me.
You know, I think acting is very mystifying for a lot of young actors and people that are trying to break into the industry. So I think one thing that might be helpful for everyone is, how did you guys, when was that moment that you decided, I want to be an actor and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen? And how did you get your first job? I mean, I'm sure it was Ender's Game. It was probably one of your first jobs right out of college. But no, like, how did you guys get in and really start chipping away and breaking it? Because everyone up here is incredibly successful at what they do, and I think it'd be very helpful to hear that.
I'll be very brief. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts. I was a modern dancer. And when I moved to New York, wanted to do modern dance and also danced with a dance company out of LA. But I did a video for Abel Ferrara, who it was a music video, and then he was shooting this film called Fear City with Melanie Griffith and Tom Berenger out of LA, and he said, I need you to be a go-go dancer. You know, so that is how I got my first film job, and then I had a injury and then went back to New York and studied and trained and for 10 years, you know, trying to learn about acting, but I found that there was so much of a crossover of dance and act. I mean, it's still, you have to know yourself, you have to be still, and that's how my first job came about.
So I went to the University of Utah, and there's an actor training program there, believe it or not. That was really good when I went there. I was very lucky. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing at the University of Utah for a long time, and then sort of stumbled into it and went, wow, this is really cool and it's really good, and these people are really good at what they do. And so I went through a few years of training with the program, and my third year of training, I decided to go to LA, and I went there for 1 year, and it was the worst year of my life. And I was sort of there for a girl, different girl. And I was sort of there to play music. I was also playing music at the time, and I was sort of there just to get away from school and figure life out and all this stuff. And It kicked my ass. And I had the worst, most miserable time, and I had this agent kind of hit on me, all this crazy crap. It was awful.
I've still yet to find someone whose first year in LA was
good?
amazing.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's like, I hated it.
I loved my first year.
Did you? Oh, you found it.
I loved it.
You loved it? Oh.
I mean, I still haven't really made a movie in LA.
Right.
I always go other places, but the weather was really nice.
You're an actor. I don't believe you.
I know. It's because I'm not a good actor.
So
you're there making music. You're having
well,
agents hit on
I was
you.
playing on Venice Beach and with this band, and I just had no idea what the hell I was doing there. And then I decided, I was miserable, and I decided to go back to the University of Utah. And the very last day I was leaving LA, I was literally packing my bags on Venice Beach, putting them in the car to drive away, and this crazy dude comes walking up the street going, "Yeah!" He's screaming upset, and he's boom, and he starts shooting things. Like, I'm as far away as I am from that camera, and I'm like, okay, I'm done here. I'm going back to Utah. And because I went back to Utah, I had this amazing thing happen where my final year of school, I got to play the role of Macbeth, and the Shakespeare Theater in Washington, D.C. actually sent somebody to see it. And it was directed by a guy from the Royal, not the Royal Shakespeare Company, but the National Theatre of Great Britain. So I mean, it just had this, like, it was just one of those moments that was really amazing. And so it took me out of Utah and got me to Washington, D.C. to study for 2 years at the Shakespeare Theatre, which really means I shall know, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff. But I got to understudy, and I got to meet, I met my agent through there. He came down from New York. They gave us a special workshop. And I sort of booked him, and he started sending me auditions from Washington, D.C., so I went up to New York, and then I got my first theater job from that, which happened to be where I met my wife. So that's how we met. It was on the acting company tour. But that was my first theater job, my first official paying theater job, equity card stuff. And then, but then the first film was, first TV appearance was like a miserable experience on a soap opera that it was terrible. I was terrible. But that's basically how I got going professionally.
That's a whole different world, soap opera.
Oh, it really is. It totally is.
It's really like theater. I mean,
I guess I always did theater in high school, loved it, very serious kid. And then I went to Nashville right out of college. Don't really ask me why, just to not be in Chattanooga. I worked at a sushi bar. I helped start the Nashville Shakespeare Festival. I didn't have any training then, but I seemed to have a facility for Shakespeare. While there, I also did several music videos. I was in the #1 country music video of 1989, I think. And
What was it? What was the video?
it wasn't Garth Brooks. I drove an 18-wheeler.
Wait, is that the name of the song?
No, the name of the song is called Little Sister. It's called Little Sister, David Lynn Jones. Never heard of it.
Wow.
But apparently the video is very successful. But I screwed up my courage and told my dad that I wanted to be an actor, and I knew I needed training from having done enough Shakespeare that I didn't really know what I was doing. So I auditioned for about 8 programs. I picked the one that was in New York. I went to NYU grad acting because I was afraid of New York, and I knew I'd never go there if I didn't have a place to land. It's, you know, one of those, I'd say fancy schmancy, fabulous training programs with, you get to work with directors that are working in the profession from all over the world, all that, you're exposed to all kinds of things. So I got my agent while I was still there. I got out of school and luckily started doing theater right away. At the time, NYU didn't offer on-camera training. Now they do. Huge mistake. For those of us that are really comfortable on stage, like, you could throw me anything on stage. I'm like, fine. I know my way around. A film set, to me, I'm just now starting to get comfortable, kind of. It's a different beast. Acting is still the same. But I will say my first soap opera, I did a couple of soaps and a Law and Order in New York. One of my soap jobs, I had to speak sign language to 2 babies deaf babies, and they didn't figure out that I couldn't speak sign language if I was holding a baby in each hand. And I had to sign things like when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, you know. And the guy comes in to teach you your sign language, you know, 5 minutes before you shoot, and you're just supposed to do it. I don't know. So my idea at the beginning, my feeling about film, and I did a small film thing that was, you know, I was scared out of my wits. My first feelings about film and TV it was like being in the beauty parlor all day long. And because they put makeup on you, you sit around, you wait. I just didn't like it. I didn't think I was good. I didn't think it was for me. Whereas on stage, I felt absolutely comfortable. So I'm really excited, you know, better late bloomer than never. I'm excited, and I think it's a lot because of the work, because I get to audition from my living room now. We live here, with Atlanta being so strong. We get to do a first shoot in our living room, send it down, then the director calls you back for an audition, to call back, you get to meet them. It's much more comfortable. And so, yeah, maybe, you know, one day I'll be as comfortable on film as I am on stage. Anyway, that's my little beginning.
When I knew I wanted to be an actor and when I actually started trying to be one, we're a couple of decades apart. I'm 36, and so in January of 1986, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then Challenger happened, and I was at home, chickenpox, so I saw it happen, and I was like, oh shit, I don't want to be an astronaut. And it's funny to look back now, you know, because honestly, literally at that age, at 9 years old, I actually had these two things transpire in my mind. One, I'm not going to be an astronaut. The next thing that happened was, I think in September of that year, my parents took me to see a movie that was initially supposed to come out that spring, but had gotten dumped out of deference to the tragedy. And it was a movie called Space Camp. And it's a movie that I think most people haven't seen, but it's rad. I highly recommend it. And I was watching this movie, and it's about these kids that go to space camp to train to be astronauts, and then they end up, because of a friendly robot, shooting them on the shuttle into space. And so I was watching these kid actors floating around in space, and right then it occurred to me at that age, I was like, oh, if I'm an actor, I can pretend to be an astronaut, but not put myself in peril. And I still get to wear the suit, and I still get to float around. That's magic. And I would get to hang out with Tom Skerritt and Kate Capshaw. So this is something I definitely think I could get behind. And so I watched movies nonstop. That's pretty much, I was either outside playing or I was inside watching movies in my friend's basement and beginning to have that first cultural conversation about discovery, about these things that bond you. And it's irrelevant whether or not the quality of the film's high or low. It's more about this shared experience. And so I started chasing that shared experience, that sense of community. And I screwed up and ended up being a professional tubist first. That's a true story. I was
a tubaist?
Tubaist. I played the tuba professionally. So I sort of exhausted every other option before circling back around acting. I was at Indiana University on a tuba performance scholarship, and I went in and told the professor there, I think I want to be an actor, because I'd done a couple of plays in high school. And I realized that being a good tuba player really doesn't mean very much. And I also was not good enough to get a job playing the tuba. And so I thought, what can I make all of the money doing? Oh, I'll be an indie actor. That'll work out so much better. But I told my professor, you know, I think I want to be an actor. And he said, you know, oh, you're never going to be good enough to play the tuba anyways, and you probably suck at acting. And I was like, okay, cool. And then they took my scholarship away for tuba. And so I ended up having to go back home. Home for me at the time was Marietta, Georgia. And so I was doing construction work and decided I'm going to audition for some schools. And I proceeded to give the worst auditions that anyone ever has, because I didn't know anything about acting. I just knew I wanted to do it. So I auditioned for every BFA conservatory program that I could audition for, and I still have the rejection letters to all of them. So I ended up with a chip on my shoulder at the University of Georgia, they have the Hope Scholarship, so I could go to school there for free. So I ended up there angry and met other like-minded angry kids that were pissed off that they were at the University of Georgia.
Or just typical people trying to get into film. A lot of anger, a lot of hostility.
Yeah, pretty much. And especially like at the time at the University of Georgia, the journalism school is magnificent there. They have the Peabody Awards. So they had all of this amazing equipment. But there were good faculty members training us for stage in the Department of Drama, but it wasn't its own curriculum. It was still part of the liberal arts program. And so I began to meet other people there, that sort of, you know, island of unwanted toys. We had all this equipment.
Call it actors. Misfit toys.
So we found all of this equipment, and there wasn't a curriculum to teach us how to use it. It was really basic stuff that they would teach you know, like basic editing. But at the time, it was just VHS editing, you know, it was like tape deck. That's how we were learning. So what we did have was all this equipment. And we also didn't have, by extension, anyone telling us what not to do. So through college, through 3 years of college at Georgia, I became really good friends with people, and we would just start making things like shitty, pretentious shorts. And we made a feature and we shot on film because they had all this equipment. And, you know, we just kind of learned by massive failure. And then we all kind of went our own separate ways. And the reason that I mention that in a long-winded version of that story is that all of those people, we got together after we'd kind of starved other places. I starved in New York for a while. Most of them moved to Atlanta from Athens and started editing commercials. All of the actors had already gone to LA and failed and come back home. And I was living in LA at the time. I'd been there for a year. And
which he loved, by the way.
Which I loved.
Which is very rare.
I loved it so much. It was very comfortable living. My friends called me and said, we're going to make a movie for $50,000. Do you want to come be in it? And I said, yes. That's why I moved to LA. I'd love to go back to Georgia since that's, you know, why I left. So we went back there and we made a movie in 10 days and didn't know anybody and decided to hell with it. We're going to submit it to Sundance because that's what you do when you have a movie. And since we'd all also worked in stage in every capacity, like we all had experience directing and writing and producing, we didn't have any money to shoot, but we were able to rehearse for free. So we sort of workshopped a movie and literally pre-blocked every frame of the movie. So, which is something I've never gotten to do in another movie since because you don't have the time because there's money involved. So we spent a Christmas break rehearsing a movie as though it were a play. Then we shot that and sent it off to Sundance and it ended up getting in. And we were really surprised because we didn't know anybody. And it ended up doing really well there for us. And we sold it. We didn't tell Magnolia Pictures when we sold it that we made it for 50 grand.
Yeah. Good move.
So we got a pretty nice sale off of it. And of course thought, you know, oh, it all worked out. We're famous and we're very soon going to be rich. And then the reality hit in where we opened theatrically, I think, to $144,000. And we were gone, I think, 72 hours after we were released. But that started the bug. And my good friend Peter here, who is a producer on The Sacrament, and we've talked a lot about this, where going through festival culture, with movies, you start meeting other like-minded people. And that's one thing that's so great about having a festival here in Chattanooga. I know as a kid from Georgia that we didn't have anything, you know, places where you could just go and watch a movie and then just talk for hours about it afterwards. So it's great to see one starting up here because that's why I get to make movies, because I would go to a festival and meet other like-minded weirdos that had no money and no connections, but they were kind of competent at with a specific skill set, and that's making movies for no money.
And now after Sundance, did you get representation, or did you kind of keep going back to the indie filmmaking route?
I've never had an agent.
That's amazing.
I've been doing it for about a decade, and I took management 2 years ago for the first time, and that's just part of the way that it worked for me in particular. Was I wasn't really on a traditional actor pass for people, you know. I didn't come from a strong program. I set out to do stage in New York, and that didn't work out. But I've always been a writer and kind of a producer and a collaborator in that way. So I treated my acting career a bit more like that, and decided, you know, I'd already failed at music, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just make movies and not worry about an agent getting me anything. So instead, it's sort of forge collaborative relationships. And in the world I live in film, it's really more that than the traditional, I'm assuming, studio, because I have no experience with that model where, you know, the producers on the movies I'm on are absolutely as relevant to the on-set experience as G&E, as the actors. You know, I had on a movie that Peter and I made called House of the Devil, I had a PA come up to me. I had a props master come up to me and say, hey, have you ever shot a gun? This is like in between takes. And I said, yeah, I'm Southern, I grew up shooting guns. He goes, okay, cool, because you look like you don't know how you're doing it. But that's the world I live in, where that made the movie better. So I like the freedom of people, you know, having each other's backs and having more of a conversation that way.
And if I can just say, because I was lucky to get to work on The Sacrament, and what struck me immediately is how many of the actors had worked together before on other projects, either as writers. Sometimes they had written them and used other people, and the director had worked. So there was a feeling, just a different feeling about it that was, it was very inspiring, because they were all like, we're just going to do it. And I'm, you know, it was neat.
There's so much gold in what everyone has just said that it's impossible to like break it all down, but I'm going to try real quickly. I'm glad we have traditional, you have traditional study, also professional training, North Carolina State. Yeah, it's very interesting, because I think as a young person or someone trying to break into the industry, there's that, okay, do I try to go to the traditional route, or do I try to go out and maybe just get commercial work based on the hustle and my personality and some brief experiences? Real quickly, you know, AJ, I think, kind of comes from, it's a great era to be a filmmaker, because you can be involved in so many avenues now. You know, actors can be producers. And like you were saying, from the studio world, if you think 20 years ago, everyone has a job and everyone has a role. And the actor's role was to act, and the producer's role was to bring it in on time, and the other producer's role was to make sure the story was great. But now, because of technology and the way the industry's changing, is people can be so collaborative, and you can have kind of a multi-talented, you know, writer. And but from a traditional training point of view, how do you guys think that impacted obviously it's great to have the network and the experience getting comfortable, but when you made the transition into, let's say, film or TV or music videos even, how is that going from being Lady Macbeth, for example, to being the, you know, sign language hospital baby holder?
Well, theater, you certainly don't make, you know, one day on a soap, I would be like, oh, paid my rent, you know, for a good 2 weeks, say. Whereas theater and I didn't know this, it simply does not pay. You have to do other things. The way I make a living as an actor here is doing audiobooks. I've done about 200. I still work with a company in New York that found a studio here for me to work at. There is no theater here that pays. And even theater that pays well, it's not like film or TV. So where was I going? Oh, yeah, it is about comfort, and on stage I've been blessed. I play like the great roles. That's what I've gotten to do with great directors, with stars, you know, I could name whatever. Great stage actors, whether they're famous or not. Fabulous people. And there's a collaboration and there's a family feeling about it. The world is small. When you've been working long enough, you tend to know everyone. I miss that. And when I jumped into film, or, you know, my little toes getting wet in film, I felt just like an idiot. It's a different, I thought it was a much different skill than it turns out to be. I thought you had to look a certain way, I wasn't pretty enough, all this stuff. I had reasons why I couldn't possibly do it. And I think it's partly just getting over that insecurity. One world I knew absolutely, and you create an arc. You rehearse for 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. The momentum goes forward. You start at the beginning of the play and it ends. With film, you shoot out, you know, I died, and then the next day I
Spoilers.
came back. Another film. But it's
not for The Sacrament.
It's and learning how to concentrate how to concentrate, do an intimate scene when you've got 20, 30 people around you with booms and hit your mark here, and then people, we shot outside some, and the last thing I did, and there were people on the streets watching, drinking wine that lived in the neighborhood, and you had to pretend that you could just, it was just me and you talking, say. And then do it 30 times for different angles. And so that's so different, and the concentration it takes. But it's like doing stage. The more you do it, of course, the more comfortable you get. So I'm looking forward to that when I can be as comfortable as I feel on stage, where I feel like if anything happened, I'm like, I can handle it. Whereas with film, I'm like, I just want to get it right and not make anybody mad. You know, that's a little how I feel. Because there's other things, and the other big thing to me, a difference is, like, I've never seen The Sacrament yet. And it's been shown, all these people have seen it, and I'm not there. And on stage, I'm in charge, I like to think, of what people are seeing when they're seeing me. With film, I could, you know, I don't know. It's just it's very odd to think that I'm out there somewhere and I'm not there, you know? So that's one of my little existential things.
Well, I was just going to say, you talked about traditional, that I think of training as your safety net, you know, and it's like wherever, whether film, stage, it's like I just say, okay, and again, the more you do something, the better you get it, the more you understand. But I think that safety net of just knowing a few little tricks, you got to have some stuff in your bag, you know, ready, and you also have to be able to be prepared for anything.
Right.
You know, they'll sit there and say, you learn the lines for an audition. Say, okay, improv. You know, and you're like, so you just can't form yourself into a box. You really have to, especially in film more than anything. You know, and I think it's probably the same for a producer or director. We all have to be prepared for whatever is coming at us. I mean, but you have a foundation.
Right.
Or a guideline.
So going from one line at the Royal Shakespeare Theater to something like Ender's Game for you, what kind of experience is that? You know, a lot of people move out to Hollywood and they come out for a reason. I'm doing this is what I believe in, this is what's going on, and this is what I'm all about. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, I need to pay the bills, and all of a sudden that commercial leaning becomes very appealing. And, you know, for you, were you ever someone who was like, I want to stay more traditional, or were you very open to, you know, getting out there? And what was your experience on, you know, a large movie?
Well, it's the Shakespeare Theater in D.C., first of all, just to clarify.
The Royal Shakespeare Theater in D.C.
It's not the Royal Shakespeare Theater. No, the reason I bring this up is because this is the one who's been at the Royal Shakespeare Company in England.
Amazing.
I'm the one who's been at the Shakespeare Theater in D.C., so
okay.
Just a little point of clarification. But no, I think in a way the timeline for me coming to this place is weathering a model that has been changing and is exactly what we're talking about. Like, on the one hand, AJ, I totally envy that in a way, because it's this collaborative, let's just, you know, DIY, let's just do it, man. Let's just get out there and make it. I love that. That's how I wish I could do it more, honestly. I mean, there's no reason I can't. I'm just saying I've had it go, it's gone differently for me for the most part. Although I've been a part of a lot of, you know, independent projects, and that's just, to me, that's where you can really be creative, you can be really collaborative, you can have a lot more fun, because going into a big set, the hardest thing, I think, is when you get your first job and it's 3 lines. Right? If you go into let's say Law and Order, you know, was one of my first ones in New York. I've been on Law and Order a few times. Oh my God, it's scary. It's so scary, because you're coming into this machine, right? You're coming into this well-oiled, everybody knows each other. Everybody's, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, how are you? You know, and you come in and you have to say how, you know, you saw the guy run down the street and he had, you know, he was the perp. But that's hard. That's harder to do than to like
to have an arc
on a role, right? And to work on a thing and like get to like work with people on the collaborative thing. So, I mean, that's how I would much prefer to do it, frankly, much. And so to go back sort of to your question, having played, I've also been the understudy to the stars. I've understudied a ton in New York. I understudied Woody Harrelson. I've understudied a bunch of guys, and that's a really weird challenge too, because you're like the fireman, you know, you have to, like the fire's going, but you have to know where the boots are, you have to know where the pole is, you have to know how to put the fire out, you have to drive the truck, and you know, all that stuff, and you got to do it, but you got to be able to do it when they say it's time to go, not because you didn't got that experience. So anyway, I had a lot of that experience in New York. It was good, but it's this thing of, to your point about economics and trying to make a buck in this business. Yeah, I've had to, in many ways, just follow the dollars, and understudying has been a way, as an actor, that I've been able to keep our family alive. It's been kind of a cool job in many ways, but man, when you've got to be ready to go when it's time. And and then I'll end up having, you know, I got to work with Julianne Moore and Todd Haynes in the film, and that was one of my best first experiences in Far From Heaven. That was just like, oh, this can be really wonderful. Like, this is more, it's a little more along those lines. Still not quite the same, but more creative, it felt more like, it just had more magic to it. It had more ease and lightness. But a lot of the big picture television stuff is so money driven and time oriented and all this stuff that you feel so much pressure walking, especially if you're a little guy, you know, you're walking in and you're just like, oh my God, please let me get the lines right and say, get to do it. And that's why that pressure comes in. And I got lucky with Ender's Game in that I kind of nailed my audition from home again. Let me back up real quick, just this quick story. So coming from New York to Chattanooga, Tennessee was a great experiment for Kate and I. We were professionals in New York City, but one of the things that brought us this direction was the fact that the tide was turning so strongly toward production in the South, in Atlanta in particular. My agency in New York actually opened an office about a year and a half or 2 years before I moved down here. They saw it all starting to come this way. They just thought, this is where it's at right now. Hollywood South is for real. So I said, well, let's give it a try and see what happens. The beauty of it is again, going with this like changing technology time frame and all this stuff that's going on is, yeah, I can be in my living room now and I can shoot my auditions and I can learn so much just from that, much more than I was ever able to in New York, going in the traditional front door way. Hi, I don't know.
Awful.
It's just, it's horrible. So that's what's got me going in the South. So when I got a good audition, a good solid audition from home, you have a certain level of comfort, and then I went and I met the director, and he played with me for a long time, and then there was an ease in that, so everything kind of was easy by the time I got into set, you know. So even played with a Polish accent and everything, just like I was ready, I was rocking it, I felt really solid. But that's rare. That's rare when you come to set. To me, anyway, when I come, I feel like if I book it, I go, oh, cool.
Yeah, when they gave me my call time on the last film, I had a panic attack. All of a sudden, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I went, and it was great and fun and easy. And so, you know. But I wanted to say one thing about the economics of it. Partly is that we were radical and had 2 children in New York as actors. And
edgy.
And when I first got out of school and I had, you know, commercial age, or I interviewed, because they would see you and call you in, and they were like, we see you, you could do cereal and toothpaste. And I was like, Shakespeare, Ibsen. You know, and I told my agent I wanted to be the great interpreter of Samuel Beckett, and he laughed and he said, how much money do you think you're doing that? You know, but it took me a while to get that you have to have your finger in as many pies as you can. And theater is my love. But thank God for audiobooks. And I started to get the message when Stevie Ray started to book commercials, and it saved our family, you know. And when the residual checks come in from TV or film, it's like, oh, thank goodness. One day we'll be able to buy a second car, you know, but you really do, unfortunately, especially if you love theater, you gotta have the other stuff going.
This is just real quick, because I think it's something, Kate, we talked about in AJ. I'd like to hear your experience on it. We talked about independent film is actually really remarkable, because sometimes the best performances by actors come from independent, non-studio financed films or large studio financed films. And it's so different though in acting because you have far less time to prepare. Your rehearsal times most of the time don't exist, as opposed to if you're doing a very large studio movie or you're on the stage, you have so much time to rehearse and to prepare. So from, and then we can hear a traditional, point of view, but what is the, how do you get a great performance when you've got a 28-day already behind production and it's like go, 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 bring out your heart and soul?
I think that the easiest way to do that is for there to be a very competent editor working on the movie, if I'm being honest. But for me, everything in the past decade of making these films that I've done has changed me. So when I started off, I wasn't very good at acting in front of camera. I mean, I might not be still, but I'm more consistent with it now, having gotten to make some movies. But I felt the crunch when I first started of, oh God, there's not enough rehearsal time. I've changed so much now that I get irritated if an actor calls me and says, hey, can we rehearse before we go down to set? And I'm like, well, why waste it there? What ends up happening for me is that it turns into much more of a homework scenario. I do a lot of homework. I still prepare like it's a play. Just because of the way my brain is compartmentalized, I learn all of the dialogue for all of the characters and all of the direction for the whole screenplay before we start shooting. It's just easier, and I don't have to think about it anymore. But I know that with things changing the way that they have, I love the VOD model. I love the ability for people to get, and selfishly for me to get to discover new filmmakers through my TV. Of course, a few years back, there's this sense of purity about it, about to hell with that. It needs to be in a theater, in a movie theater with a bunch of people. And then I started having friends that had kids, and they couldn't go to the theater. But once their kid was asleep, they could rent a movie on VOD. And renting that movie on VOD is a movie that was never going to be available to them in Marietta, Georgia, because it was only going to play, at the Landmark in New York City. So that started changing and started reacquiring a sense of culture and identity for people that care about movies, and big or small started to matter less. That being said, there's no money in what I do, but that's okay because there's total ownership instead. If I was going the studio route, and I absolutely would if they wanted me to. Like I'm very much of the mind that I'd be very happy to sell out and get a paycheck. The reason that I haven't is because there's a general lack of interest from the people writing those checks.
You can be I like to think that even the most anti-commercial actor can be the best commercial actor.
I would sell my ass out so fast.
Right.
I love money. I'd like to see what it's like to have some.
Well, guys, one thing, is acting hard?
No, that's why we do it. It's the easiest job on a film set.
It's the most fun. Once I got to play Janis Joplin for almost a year and wear feathers in my hair and have the audience stand up and be like, Janis, Janis, and wear velvet pantsuits. And one of my friends came to see it, and she was like, she works in insurance. She was like, what, you get paid to do this? Sometimes it's the most fun I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know I've been monopolizing this, but the thing that I did want to say is that there's lack of money, right? But for me, I've gotten to have so many adventures, and from having a dream as a kid, like I would love to be in movies. Yeah, okay, so I don't have a giant savings account, but I got to get on a plane and fly here to talk about movies with people that I didn't know, and to show a movie that I'm particularly proud of having gotten to collaborate on. And so those adventures, every time you make a movie as an actor, you're basically going to summer camp. That's only going to exist this one time, in this one moment in history. And the difference is that there's a journal that was filmed for it. And hopefully, through the experience that you share of being on set, being off set, going to these places, working your ass off for no money, just to try to tell a story because you're compelled to, that somebody might see that and find entertainment for 90 minutes, or that maybe it'll make them go, I kind of want to tell some stories with my friends. getting to do those adventures is everything to me. You know, like on Sacrament, I got to be in a helicopter I got paid. Now, I'm not mad at Peter that the rate was not very high, but I got paid to fly around in a Huey helicopter for a couple of days. I couldn't believe it. I was like, they're paying me to do this. I mean, not much money, but you know, I still got to do that. And the only reason I got to do that was because I had a dream, and then got lucky enough to get to do it.
And just something, you know, I think a lot of actors, you have to be stubborn because there's so many people willing to say no to you. Pretty much anyone would rather tell you no. And when I first said I want to be an actor, I had many people tell me, it's impossible, you can't do it. And I just kind of said, oh yeah? Oh yeah? I'm from here, you know. I didn't see anything but the stuff at the Chattanooga Theater Center. But somehow, I don't know, it's crazy, but you do need that will, that just keep going, make it happen, you know?
It's really interesting. I feel like a lot of people that want to get into acting, they glamorize the process. It's
not that glamorous.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, but I mean, I love it. I wouldn't want to be anything else, but you know, it's just what you make it. I mean,
right. Well, I feel like a lot of that comes back to kind of the economics of it all. Is that, you know, I think a lot of people move to LA and assume if I can get that one break. Same with writing. I have so many people that are like, hey, I've got a screenplay, you know, I think this is my break. And you're like, well, what else are you writing?
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, well, I've got this one that I'm really working on. So it's like, are you really a writer, or have you written something? And I feel like acting, and I don't know because I'm not in the field, but I feel like that's, you know, those first jobs, holding the sword and one lines and stepping into, you know, soaps, that's kind of how it all begins for everybody. And I think we forget that, you know, even Leonardo DiCaprio, I know, easy name to go for, but he's got child commercial reels that he was doing for years before he got, you know, his break. And so I think, you know, what do you guys think? I mean, you've kind of touched on it, but that's why I was like, is acting hard in the sense of you always have to be doing it?
The worst is the unemployment. Anyone can tell you that, is that the jobs end. They always do. And it's rare for you, because of the way American theater has changed as well, it's rare that you know what you'll be doing. You get one job at a time, then you got to hustle and get the next one. And that terrible thing of, you know, I mean, good, like whatever, New York Times, I had these, you know, rising star maybe 3 times. And every time I was like, great, I've made it now.
The phone's not ringing.
You know, it's just, part of it's luck, part of it's, I don't know. And then ultimately I had to say, why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I love it. And there's no other reason. I expect nothing. I just feel lucky when I get to do it. So that's been a change for me. I was so striving, you know, if I do this, this will happen. Who knows, you know? I want to be like, what's her name? George C. Scott's wife? Colleen Dewhurst. And have my film career late, right? Julie Bovasso. There are lots of older, you know, actors out there. And so I hope to be one of them.
I firmly believe that my actual job is to not act, because that's the work part, you know, like what I actually do is just have to deal with no income coming in, the insecurity of, will I get to do this thing that I've put so many years of labor into. Every time you rap on a shoot, when you picture rap, I mean, it's no bullshit. Like, you really do walk away and you go, oh, well, that was probably my last job. Mm-hmm. Because it's a very unique position to be in, to have no idea what your next movie is or if you will be in one. Because there's just no telling. You don't have, if you're not the one cutting the check for the film, you don't have any control over that. So I just, you know, my job is to deal with insecurity and not getting to do the thing that I love, so that when we get to go and actually make a movie, that's vacation for me.
It is. It's like a vacation. And one of the odd things on a film set, you know, you're like together 16 hours a day. I mean, you become this little family, this little hub, and then you wrap and everyone's kind of like, okay, really nice to meet you, bye. And you're like, okay, that was it, you know, because you're just so close and, you know, with everyone, and then you're you know, you're wrapped and you're gone, and that's that same thing. It's like, well, that was really fun. Will it happen again?
Oh, I cry like mad at the last day of things. I just cry through the whole, almost, I go backstage and I'm crying, I'm like, stop crying, you're about to kill the you, stop. But, yeah.
Is acting hard? I'm gonna go back to that for a second. This is my, the thing, I think you have to, obviously the more you do it, it's gonna get easier and easier. If you get that chance. It's hard because often it's so far and few between for a lot of us. But what I find is really helpful is to make things happen when you can. Do what you can when you can. And so here's my little segue plug to the thing I do here.
We have to go do
and
it.
we have to go do it. When Kate and I moved down here, we started this project here in town in Chattanooga called the Muse of Fire Project. And thank you, shout out. And what we do is we get kids from different areas of Chattanooga to come together for a 10-week play-making process. So each kid writes a short play. Each 10, 11, 12-year-old kid writes a 10-minute play. And then we produce those plays with adult actors. So I do get to keep acting. I get to be acting the whole time. But I'm also in this, I'm more of a mindset like you. It sounds like AJ in terms of, I love the collaborative effort. I love the like community building. Like let's put on a show, you know, kind of like, it sort of boils down to that, really. It's like, let's just get together. My dad's got a barn. Let's do a play, you know. Or a film, for that matter. It's just still the same kind of thing. You get together, like, let's just make it happen. And I love that. And so that's where I get to do it. And I go, oh yeah, I can do this. I have all this creative energy, all this creative stuff going on. I get to find people and work with them and do stuff. And so I get to, yeah, it's not film necessarily specific, but we are going to start trying to make films out of these kids' plays. So it'll give us that opportunity to work as actors, as directors, as producers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And when in a play...
And create, hopefully bring some more talent along as we come along.
When in a play or a movie would you get to play a lava lamp? Or a tiger?
Yeah,
right?
One of our actors is here right now. Say, hey, Isaac.
Or a football player. We have many girls playing in the Super Bowl.
So it's 3 o'clock today and 7 o'clock tonight at the Downtown Public Library, the Muse of Fire Project. And then, of course, Kate's going to be in the film with AJ tonight after the thing, and I'm going to be in Stonewall. We're in Stonewall in tomorrow, the day after Stonewall died, tomorrow morning.
But I'm only a voiceover at the
Oh, and we have a Facebook page and we have a website, the Muse of Fire Project. Like us, love us, come volunteer. We need your.
Come see what we do.
Come see what we do. Yeah.
As you can tell, all these guys up here and girls obviously know what they're talking about. We're running out of time, but do we have any questions at all from the crowd? Anyone have any questions?
I'm not an actor, so I don't know much of that world, but I am curious about stage versus film and how, kind of what Kate was talking about, how whenever you have to do your take 30 times and you're looking at someone watching you and you have to pretend something catastrophic has happened to you or something. So I'm just wondering, with stage being so fluid and it's a production that it's for less, there's not room for error. Stage.
Yes.
Uh-huh. What are what are the positive points of film? Like, how can you enjoy it after your 30th take?
I'm still learning, but the last time I had a real dramatic thing to do in this last movie, and I kept getting, and I got to smoke a cigarette in the scene, which was really helpful, but I smoked so much I got a headache, 30 takes or whatever. But I got to, prep back. What I'm learning to do is do the kind of work, what AJ's talking about, the kind of preparation work. And the main thing I'm finding is like, if I can be as relaxed as possible, And after every take, I breathe. I mean, I have to do this whole mental thing. Otherwise, I'll just be like freaked out. And I need to hit the same mark, and I need to look at the same place, and I need to see the car coming up. There are things you have to remember. And I guess it's that, what I find the most is like the calmness. I need to be able to focus, and I need to keep my head about me. And you know, everybody, like, they're really nice. Usually the people who are on set with you. And even when you, like, the director would be like, you know, you're saying that line wrong again. And I'd go backstage and like, you know, but it's a learning process. And it's really learning, the preparation is very different for me because it has to be so quick. But it's more the confidence of knowing I do know how to act. It's maybe using it in a slightly different way, but it's not as, except for the rehearsal part, it's not, you know, I just have to learn how to look at the script, learn the other characters' lines is fabulous advice. Fabulous advice. So you just have more of a sense of the world.
Painting is painting, right? Like whether or not it's, I'm not trying to be reductive, but like if you're painting something broadly on the side or painting a house, technically it's the same thing as a small painting. The brush size changes and the type of paint changes, but it's still just pretending. So my job is I just pretend. And the difference is on stage, technically speaking, the frame size is just a lot bigger. So when you're talking about a proscenium, the camera's still the house. So I have to show with more of my body and with my voice and with the tone more. And as you come in tighter, you just start painting in finer lines. And you reach a point, a transitional point where it has to go internal when you're on film. Because if I have to turn my head like this or do this gesture, you know, and I'm on an 85, it's just, it's not going to play, it's going to be weird. So it's actually the simplest way that I could relate to it is pretend and to be legitimately, what works for me is to just be legitimately listening every single time. It's less selfish that way, and less selfish makes a better performance. So just plugging into everybody that's going around and trying to be of service to the script and to the people that are there in the scene with you, as well as the gaffers. And if there's a way that you can make it easier on a steady cam op and you can feel that fluidity, you're building another relationship. So I get to act with a whole lot more people than just the person acting in the scene with me. So I'm sharing it kind of with everybody else.
And I think a similarity is also that you're looking at what are you doing to the other person in the scene with you? What are you trying to provoke? And also what is the event of the scene you're in? What's the story being told? To have a knowledge of that instead of waiting for someone to tell you because you're supposed to do that yourself. But it's having a sense of that gives you security, I think.
This is an after the panel conversation, but I'd love to talk to you guys about directors now with being able to watch everything from the video village as opposed to being with you guys out in front of the camera, what your perceptions have been on that, because now the director's looking straight through the frame that the camera's seeing that's coming in live and digital, and they're now directing for the frame as opposed to directing the talent. But that's just a favor.
Does anyone else have another question? Yep.
The traditional audition process, could you guys have any ideas on how to revise it, where it would be better for you to show what you can do in such a concentrated little period of time with 100 people out there, et cetera? Is there any way to make that process better in terms of what can a director do to ensure that you're giving the best performance in that room? Because it's a horrible process.
Yes.
Yeah, I would get rid of it entirely.
I think you put them at ease talking. I mean, it's great to have someone take a look at really look at their resume and ask them some questions, put them at ease. I don't know, do you have kids? It's something to break it a little bit. And then the best thing to me, one of my favorite things is when you do it and they're like, okay, and then they give you a few notes. And then you get to show that you can react, you can take the notes, you can And sometimes they work with, you know, they'll give you improv, whatever, but that's, the worst to me is when you go in, you do it, and they say thank you, and that's it. So sometimes for the actor, I always say, hi, I'm Kate, you know, my name's Kate, hi, you know, I try to have some sort of contact with them. And I think the other thing for actors to remember, and is that, and maybe I'm just lying to myself, but I try to say they want me to be good. They want me to do well. They want me to be the one. They want to find the actor. And so it's to stay as open as I can. So when you've got some of those mean, especially in New York, those mean girls that are like 20 and they're like, no. You know, they just want to tell you no, it seems like. And they're real attractive and they're like, you're not on the list or whatever. You know, it's so hard not to get like, not to take that in.
Nina, what were you
Well, I was going to ask you, are you talking about self-taping or in-house auditions, live auditions?
No, either way,
Would that-
go either way, but mostly I was talking about in the room.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It's just, you know, because you can just drive yourself crazy asking questions. I think just know that an actor wants to do good and not be afraid to criticize or judge or, you know, say, hey, let's tweak this. And, you know, because as an actor, we want to give you what you want. And I think the director wants you to do well. So I think that would probably be the best in an in-house. But the self-taping auditions, they're, you know, you just say, oh, there it goes into cyberspace. Ready to go.
I love the
Well-
self-taping, Jeff. I have to say,
Love it.
it's made a huge difference for me. Just because
Well, you get to edit, right? Like you get to.
I can be. First of all, in New York, I never got to see what I was doing.
Uh-huh.
You got
that
feedback
part is-
occasionally. Like you'd get a casting director who was on your side maybe, who started saying, oh, that's good, can we try it this way? And then if you made it through that casting director and made it to the director, then yeah, you could probably start to have a conversation and play. But often, you didn't even get past it because it's what Kate said, you go in and you walk in and you go, here's my, you know, just memorized thing on the subway that I just threw out and my eyes are going, you know, I don't know what I'm doing here. So there's no time to relax and get into it and really play and enjoy what you can do. And that, it sucks, it's a horrible situation. But having the time at home, to me, and we've really had much more success, frankly. Well, partly because we also understand how it can work in a good way. Like we've gotten good enough eyes and ears to get a sense of how we come across and you know what we need to do to make our auditions better. So we'll do them over and over and over and over until we go, yeah, let's send that one out the door. Makes sense to me because now at least I have a level that I've hit, and then you get to see one of my best, what I felt was my best takes, and then we can talk. You know what I mean?
I suck at auditioning. I've
I've
literally never booked a job off of an audition. I think it creates a false relationship and a false energy. It sort of almost treats me like hat in my hands, like please validate me, please, I promise I'll do a good job if you'll just like me. When the fact of the matter is that it should be just as much them auditioning for me. Because nobody deserves to be making movies. This is not a fundamentally required thing for people to do. This is a choice industry. And so if I go in, I'm just as much choosing whether or not to work with those people, especially, and that goes again back to the whole money thing. And it's like what Steve was saying, I've gotten stressed out the times when I walked in and was like, oh, I could be on Wolf of Wall Street if I don't screw this up. Well, guess what I do? I screw that up because that's on my mind. But I think a conversation would be better because if you just think about it logistically, that's what a job interview is. I'd like it to be treated more like a potential job interview. If I were to go for a job interview in most industries, they're not going to tell me in the first interview, all right, let's go get you up on that coffee counter and see you make a latte. They're going to train me for that. And it's fair that I'm supposed to already come trained, but it's a very unnatural, strange thing to say, okay, go ahead and entertain me right now. You know, it ends up being a backward, I don't like the behind the 8 ball vibe with that.
The Brits, just, I mean, in terms of theater, the British directors, sometimes I'll be like, don't you want me to audition for you? They talk and ask you questions. It's just, it's different than, I find that a different, pretty much you can count on. They'll just have a big, and want to know about your children, and it's weird.
But it puts you so much more.
It does.
Very nice, actually.
And this, speaking to this about knowing what, like, I work less in theater now, mostly because I'm here and not in New York. But when I do work, I work with people that I want to work with. I don't have time anymore for the directors that treat actors like doo-doo, and because I don't make enough money to do it. I don't get paid enough to be treated like doo-doo. and I'm too good, and I don't want to waste my time away from my family and all the devotion I put into my work on something that I don't want to do. So that does feel good, however little money sometimes I have in my pocket.
And on that upbeat note, I'd like to thank everybody. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thanks for coming out.